My wife went pantyless for her ex. I let her think I didn't know, then showed up at lunch. She never knew I could destroy someone without lifting a finger. I don't exist on paper, not the real me anyway. Derek Lawson is a licensed financial advisor with a spotless record, modest income, and an unremarkable life. That's the version the world sees. The version my neighbors know. The shadow that lives in the spaces between legitimate finance and international crime. That's who I really am. My business card says financial consultant. But what I actually do is make dirty money clean. I'm the expert the untouchables call when they need their sins washed away. The cartels, the arms dealers, the human traffickers, the corrupt politicians, they all have my private number. Not that they'd ever admit it. Last month, I moved $10 million through 4 countries and 12 banks. By the time I was done, that blood money had been laundered, fragmented, reassembled, and returned to American soil as legitimate business profit from a shell corporation. Every step was meticulous: encryption, swapping, layering, creating false documentation, misdirecting tax authorities. When I finish, there's nothing to trace, no breadcrumbs to follow. I don't care where it came from, I always tell my clients. They never ask how I do it. That's our unspoken contract. No questions, no moral judgments, just business. My personal finances are a labyrinth even the most skilled investigators couldn't navigate. I maintain 16 accounts across 8 countries, each in jurisdictions with different oversight systems. I own 10 cryptocurrency wallets, each holding different coins, none with associated identities. A separate company technically owns everything in my life. My house, cars, travel expenses, insurance policies. On paper, I make $50,000 a year. Just enough to pay legitimate taxes and appear normal if anyone should look too closely. The legal system can't touch me, even when they suspect what I do. If I'm sued, I own nothing. I'm just an employee. If I'm investigated, my company operates with transparent, modest profits that raise no flags. If I'm monitored, my warning network alerts me 2 steps ahead of any surveillance. My clients often try to repay me with gifts I can't accept. Beautiful women, drugs, yachts, safe havens in countries with no extradition treaties. They view me as their guardian angel and want to express their gratitude. I always refuse. Maintaining boundaries is how I survive in this world. "Mr. Lawson, please," a Colombian client once insisted, pushing a key card across the table. "A penthouse in Cartagena. No paperwork, completely private." I slid it back. I appreciate the gesture, but my answer is always the same. "You saved my entire operation. Name your price then." "I already did. You paid my fee. That concludes our business." He laughed, but I could see the confusion in his eyes. People like him can't understand someone who doesn't want more. But wanting more is how people in my profession get caught. For 15 years, I've maintained perfect discipline, never taking extra, never getting involved. Then last month, something happened that forced me to accept help for the first time. Not from a client, but from someone much more dangerous. The darkness closing in wasn't from the government, the FBI, or international financial investigators. It came from the person closest to me, my wife, Claire. She sleeps beside me every night, her breathing steady, her hand occasionally reaching for mine in the darkness. I've memorized every curve of her face, every shade of green in her eyes. 10 years of marriage, and I thought I knew everything about her. Last Tuesday, I found the surveillance software on my home network. Sophisticated, nearly undetectable. 2 days later, I noticed the pattern in her grocery trips that always lasted exactly 47 minutes. Yesterday, I discovered the encrypted communications on a device hidden in her yoga bag. So now I lie awake at night beside the woman I've shared my life with, wondering, what happens when the betrayal comes not from a client or a federal agent, but from the person sleeping next to you every night? And what happens when you know they've betrayed you, but they don't know that you know? Claire isn't actually her name. It's Camille. Camille Lawson, the epitome of beauty, confidence, and outward perfection. Golden blonde hair that catches the light, eyes the color of tropical waters, curves in all the right places. When she walks into a room, conversations pause. People stare. They always have. She was a Dean's List student when we met, moving in elite circles I needed access to. Now she's my wife of 10 years, the perfect accessory at the small social events I attend, the beautiful mystery who never asks questions about what I really do. Camille believes I'm a successful, legitimate businessman who simply values privacy. Our mortgage gets paid by my company. New luxury cars appear in our driveway annually. We take weekend getaways to coastal properties and international vacations monthly. Designer packages arrive weekly. She doesn't ask questions because she doesn't need to. The lifestyle speaks for itself. Our sex life has always been intense, euphoric, seemingly absolute. Camille is the aggressor, creative and unpredictable. She blindfolds me, ties me up, whispers fantasies that make my skin burn. I never imagined she'd need to look elsewhere. Shows what I know. Years ago, Camille told me about Colton Hayes, her college sweetheart, a Marine who broke her heart when he enlisted. They had been passionate, reckless, inseparable until his deployment. He vanished from her life for 8 years. She never mentioned him again, until recently. The first signs were subtle, but to someone like me who notices patterns for a living, they screamed like sirens. Camille became suddenly intensely focused on sex. Not just frequent, but desperate, as if searching for something. Her smile appeared more often but didn't reach her eyes. She'd laugh at my jokes while her mind was clearly elsewhere. Something felt wrong, like the air pressure changing before a storm. I didn't confront her immediately. In my business, rushing gets you killed. I observed. I collected data. I waited for mistakes. At a neighborhood barbecue 3 weeks ago, Mark Wilson, 2 beers in and loose-lipped, mentioned that Colton Hayes is back in town, looking better than ever. I watched Camille's face as he said it. She froze for a microsecond, then took an unnecessarily large sip of wine. No one else would have noticed. "That Marine guy?" another neighbor asked. "Yeah, did some special forces stuff overseas. Now he's working security for Blackridge." The timing of his return aligned exactly with when Camille began changing. That night I lay awake beside her making calculations. I don't rage when betrayed. I activate. I mobilize resources. The next morning, I called Sanchez, a client who owes me more than money. "I need information on someone. Colton Hayes, former Marine, now at Blackridge Security. Everything. Now." 48 hours later, I had a comprehensive file. Birth certificate, military records, GPS data, text messages, bank statements, medical history, current address. Everything that exists on Colton Hayes in digital form was now mine. What I discovered didn't shock me. It focused me like a laser. Colton had deliberately sought out Camille, getting her number from a mutual friend. His initial texts were casual, friendly. She responded politely but briefly. Then he escalated, sending her a photo of them from college, shirtless on a beach. "Remember this day? Never felt anything like that since." Camille resisted at first. "I'm married now, Colton. Happily." But he persisted, and gradually, her tone shifted. "We shouldn't be talking like this" became, "I can't stop thinking about what you said." Resistance became ambiguity. Ambiguity became invitation. 4 weeks after his first message, Camille agreed to meet him for lunch. I scrolled through their recent exchanges with ice forming in my veins. The final message from him read, "Wear a dress, no underwear, like old times." Her reply, "Should I forget the panties too?" Half joking, half serious, but to me, it was a knife between the ribs. Now I sit in my office, watching the security feed as she stands before our bedroom mirror. She's trying on the 4th dress, a red one that barely reaches mid-thigh. Her movements are deliberate, practiced. She checks herself from every angle, applies another coat of lipstick, sprays perfume in places only a lover would discover. The reservation is for noon tomorrow at Bellini's. She told me she's having lunch with her sister. I know every detail, what table they'll sit at, what Colton plans to order, which hotel room he's already booked 3 blocks away. What would you do if the woman you loved was quietly preparing to meet her ex-lover for a sexual rendezvous? What would you do when you know every detail before she even steps into the restaurant? After confirming Camille's secret communications with Colton, I didn't explode in rage. I never do. In my world, anger without strategy is suicide. I've watched powerful men destroy themselves with impulsive reactions. I've built my career on their mistakes. The strong don't throw the first punch. They create situations where the opponent walks willingly into the trap. I contacted my security team, a group I call the Circuit, former intelligence operatives, hackers, and mercenaries who owe me their freedom. 2 years ago, I helped them avoid federal prison after a private military operation went sideways in South America. Now they work exclusively in the shadows, and occasionally for me. "I need everything on Colton Hayes," I told Marcus, their leader. "Military records, financial status, communications, current location, priority status." "Timeline?" he asked. "Yesterday." Within 48 hours, I received the most comprehensive dossier I've ever seen on a civilian. military service records detailing his deployments to Afghanistan and Syria, medical files showing shrapnel wounds to his left shoulder and PTSD treatment, social media accounts, including private messages, GPS location data, ex-girlfriend names, outstanding debts, and most valuably, a complete transcript of all communications between him and my wife. The messages revealed Colton's systematic emotional reconquest. He started with friendly check-ins, war stories designed to evoke sympathy. Some nights I still wake up hearing the IEDs. Talking to you helps. Then he strategically shifted to reminiscing about their relationship. Their first kiss during a rainstorm, sex in his car after prom, her habit of going without underwear when they went dancing. Camille's resistance was pathetically weak. I shouldn't be talking about this, I'm married. Then, I'm just being nice, Colton. You went through hell. Finally, I'm just curious what you've been up to all these years. What infuriated me wasn't the prospect of physical betrayal. It was the emotional treachery already underway. She allowed him to plant seeds of memory in her mind, let old feelings creep into our present life. She wasn't coerced. She walked toward him willingly while lying beside me each night. By week 4, Colton invited her to lunch at Bellini's, an upscale Italian place on the south side. I knew the time, 12:30 p.m., the location, even which table they'd reserved. The corner booth, partially hidden by a decorative wine rack. His final message read, "Wear that red dress I loved." Nothing underneath. "I've been going crazy thinking about you." Her reply, "You really haven't changed." "All right. Seeing you again makes me nervous." The night before their planned rendezvous, I had the circuit plant a recording device and tracker in Camille's purse while she showered. Not just for surveillance, but for evidence, preparing for all possibilities. I deliberately chose not to stop her. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. More importantly, I wanted her to see what I saw. In my business, reputation is everything. If you don't punish betrayal appropriately, you become a target. The same principle applies in marriage. The morning of their lunch date, I watched Camille's routine through our home security system. She spent extra time on her makeup, chose her most expensive perfume, and selected the red dress, exactly as he'd requested. She called her sister to establish her alibi. She kissed me goodbye with a practiced casualness that now felt like a slap. "Just lunch with Melissa," she said. "Don't wait up if you're working late." I smiled. "Have fun." As the door closed behind her, I opened my laptop and activated the tracking software. The red dot that represented my wife moved steadily toward Bellini's. I opened another window showing the restaurant's security feed, courtesy of the manager who once needed $200,000 laundered quickly after a messy divorce. I watched Camille arrive first, checking her appearance nervously in her compact mirror. Colton entered 7 minutes later. Military posture, designer suit, that easy confidence of a man about to reclaim conquered territory. Their embrace lasted a few seconds too long. His hand rested on her lower back as he guided her to their table. The audio feed kicked in. "You look exactly the same," he said. "Even better, actually." Camille blushed. "You're still a flatterer." "Not flattery if it's true." He ordered wine without consulting the menu. "Remember that cabin in Vermont? Your first time trying champagne?" "I try not to think about the past too much." "Why not? Best weeks of my life." Their conversation continued, dripping with innuendo and shared history. With each glass of wine, Camille leaned closer, laughed more easily, touched his hand more frequently. By the second hour they weren't even pretending this was a friendly catch-up. "My place is 10 minutes away," he said finally. Camille hesitated. "I don't know, Colton. This is just to talk more privately. No pressure." She toyed with her wedding ring. "I should get back soon." "Your husband won't be home for hours. You said so yourself." I watched my wife's face as she made her decision. The slight nod, the smile that wasn't for me. "Just for a little while." I closed the laptop and made a phone call. When a man discovers his wife is about to betray him, does he destroy everything immediately? Or does he let her reveal her true nature before deciding both their fates? I chose the latter, but with a twist that neither Camille nor Colton would see coming. That afternoon, I arrived at Bellini's 10 minutes before their reservation. My team had already set up additional recording devices the previous day, complementing what was in Camille's purse. A circuit member sat 3 tables away, posing as a businessman having lunch. I positioned myself at the bar, angled to see their table through the mirror behind the rows of liquor bottles. The bartender, another connection who occasionally helps me move cash through his 3 restaurants, kept my scotch glass full without being asked. I watched them arrive separately. Camille first, then Colton 5 minutes later. A poor attempt at discretion. She was wearing the red dress he'd requested. Thin material, low cut, showing every curve of her body. As she walked, the fabric clung to her in a way that confirmed she'd followed his instructions completely. No underwear. What I felt wasn't jealousy. It was confirmation. The woman I loved had willingly submitted to a man who had once discarded her like garbage. Worse, she craved that feeling of submission. The righteousness of my position crystallized in that moment. They chose a corner booth, sitting side by side rather than across from each other. Lovers, not friends catching up. Colton took her hand immediately. She didn't pull away. The way Camille smiled at him, I knew she had already surrendered emotionally, if not yet physically. I watched them for 17 minutes. His hand on her knee, sliding upward. Her laughter, too loud, too eager. Their heads bent close together. I finished my drink and approached their table without warning. "Hello, Camille," I said, my voice soft but cutting like a blade. They both turned. Camille's face drained of color. Colton raised an eyebrow, more annoyed than concerned. I sat down across from them, ignoring Colton completely, eyes fixed on my wife. "Aren't you going to introduce your old friend?" Camille panicked, trying to withdraw her hand from Colton's, but he tightened his grip, a territorial display that would cost him dearly. "Derek," she stammered. "This isn't... I can explain." Colton smiled, the smug expression of a man who thinks he's won. "I'm Colton Hayes. Camille and I go way back." "I know exactly who you are," I replied without looking at him. "Camille, I need to speak with you. Privately." "We're in the middle of lunch," Colton objected. I finally turned to him. "This will only take a moment. Then you can continue your... reunion." Something in my tone made him release Camille's hand. She stood reluctantly, visibly trembling. I led her across the restaurant, past the women's restroom, and into the men's. It was a single occupancy room. No cameras, no witnesses. I locked the door behind us. For several long seconds, I said nothing. Then I reached down and lifted the hem of her dress, confirming what I already knew. Nothing underneath. Her eyes widened with the realization that I knew, that I had known all along. I pushed her gently toward the mirror, standing behind her, pointing at her reflection. "Is this my wife?" I asked quietly. "The woman who meets her ex-lover wearing no underwear? What were you planning to show him? What were you going to let him do?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "It's not what you think, Derek. I don't care about your explanations," I interrupted. "I care about your actions. And right now, your actions are telling me everything I need to know." She tried to turn around, but I held her in place, forcing her to face her own reflection. "Please," she whispered. "I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. He just kept texting and These are my instructions," I said, cutting her off again. "You will go home immediately. You will not change clothes. You will not text anyone, call anyone, or stop anywhere. You will wait for me. If you disobey, you disappear from my life. Permanently. Do you understand?" She nodded, mascara streaking down her face. "Say it," I insisted. "I understand." Her voice was barely audible. I released her and unlocked the door. "Go." She hesitated, looking back at me. "What about... I'll handle Colton. Go home now." I watched her leave the bathroom, hurry past their table without looking at Colton, and exit the restaurant. Only when I confirmed she had gotten into her car did I return to the table where Colton waited, his confidence visibly shaken. "She had to leave," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "But don't worry. You and I have plenty to discuss." His eyes narrowed. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married when I first contacted her." "That's your first lie," I replied calmly. "Let's not start there." What would a woman caught in betrayal choose? Obedience to save her marriage, or continued escape from responsibility? And a man like me, would I truly forgive? Or was I simply preparing my next move in a game she didn't even know we were playing? I returned to the table where Colton remained seated, looking comfortable and smug, like a poker player who just won a hand. I didn't sit down immediately. Instead, I stood over him, letting my presence fill his space. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation," I said coldly. He leaned back, unimpressed. "About what? The woman who can't forget her past?" "About boundaries." "Boundaries. He laughed. She still loves me. You saw how she looked at me. This isn't over because you showed up. You plan to continue contacting my wife? She's a grown woman. She can make her own decisions. He took a sip of wine from Camille's glass. A deliberate provocation. I didn't argue. Instead, I sat down and started reciting facts. Your parents are Marcus and Ingrid Hayes. They live in Scottsdale now, after selling the family home in Denver. Your dogs, Casey and Mickey, stay with your mother when you travel. Your sister Julie lives in Austin with her daughter Emma, who just started at UT. Your best friend Billy's girlfriend is pregnant. He doesn't know yet. Your bank account at First Capital is overdrawn by $4,200. Your apartment is actually leased in your mother's name because your credit is still recovering from that identity theft situation 3 years ago. With each detail, the color drained from Colton's face. By the time I finished, his hands were gripping the edge of the table. How the fuck do you know all that? He demanded. I have my network, and none of them share my restraint. Are you threatening me? I'm clarifying your situation. I leaned forward. Tonight, before midnight, if she chooses you, you'll receive a message. If not, you will never contact her again. Or what? You'll beat me up? He snorted. I was Special Forces. I don't fight, Mr. Hayes. I erase. Now uncertainty crept into his expression. What does that mean? It means if you call her, text her, or approach her after today without her explicit invitation, I'll show you what it feels like to lose everything you care about. Colton's face hardened. You're just a weak husband playing at being a mobster. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. You'll understand soon enough that I'm not a weak husband. I'm the nightmare you haven't met yet. I left him there, walked to my car, and checked my phone. A message from Marcus at the circuit confirmed Camille had arrived home as instructed. She was still wearing the red dress, sitting in our kitchen with a cup of coffee, eyes puffy from crying. No calls made, no texts sent. That was something. When I entered our house 30 minutes later, the air felt heavy. Tension strung like a wire between us. I didn't speak, just poured myself coffee and sat across from her at our Marble Island countertop. Camille started immediately. Derek, I'm so sorry. I held up my hand, cutting her off. No apologies today, only truth and choices. She nodded, fingers trembling around her mug. Did he touch you? I asked. Just my hand. My knee. If I hadn't shown up, would you have let him touch you more? She looked down. I don't know. You do know. Tell me the truth. A tear slid down her cheek. I wasn't planning to sleep with him, but I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come. You wore no underwear because he told you to. Why? I wanted to feel that old excitement, just for lunch, then end it. You wanted him to imagine fucking you. She flinched at my words but didn't deny them. Do you still love him? I asked. No, I love you. Her eyes met mine. It wasn't about love. It was about feeling something different, remembering who I was before. Before me? Before everything. Before adult life. Before responsibility. I nodded slowly, processing. Here are your options, Camille. Simple and clear. If you want our marriage, you never contact Colton again. No goodbye text, no explanation, nothing. And if I can't promise that? Her voice was barely audible. Then, you go to him. Tonight. I won't stop you. I won't cause a scene. But you leave with nothing except what you're wearing right now. Her eyes widened. What do you mean, nothing? No money, no car, no possessions, just you and that red dress. You can't do that. Half of everything is legally... I'm not talking about legal ramifications, Camille. I'm talking about what I control. I kept my voice neutral. And I'll know if you violate the agreement. The consequences won't come from a courtroom. She crumpled then, tears streaming down her face. I want to stay. I want our marriage. I'll do anything. Please, Derek. I made a horrible mistake. I'll never contact him again. I swear. I studied her face for a long moment. I'm not offering forgiveness right now. I'm offering a path forward. I'll reassess after I observe your actions. Words mean nothing today. That night, we slept in the same bed for the first time, knowing the truth between us. I kept my back to her, and she didn't try to touch me. I could hear her crying quietly, but I didn't turn around. For the first time in 5 years of marriage, she lay beside me like a stranger. I didn't sleep. My mind calculated possibilities, contingencies, and fallout scenarios. If she kept her word, perhaps we could rebuild. Trust erodes slowly, but can be reconstructed with consistent reinforcement. If she broke it, I had measures in place she couldn't imagine. Around 3 a.m. I heard her whisper, thinking I was asleep. "I'll earn your trust back. I promise." I said nothing, but in the darkness, I allowed myself to consider whether I wanted her to. The truth is, I'd seen too many powerful people destroyed by forgiveness. Too many empires crumble because someone believed in second chances. In my world, mercy is often mistaken for weakness. Trust, once broken, becomes a liability. But there was another truth I hadn't confronted yet. Despite everything, some small part of me still wanted to believe her, and that terrified me more than her betrayal. The next morning, I checked Camille's phone. No messages from Colton. She handed it to me without hesitation, a small gesture toward rebuilding trust. But I knew better than to believe one night of compliance meant anything. 3 days passed in tense silence. We moved around each other carefully like strangers sharing temporary quarters. Then on the 4th day, her phone chimed while we were having breakfast. She glanced at it, then immediately slid it across the table to me. "It's him," she said quietly. The message read, "I can't stop thinking about you. What we had was real. Don't throw it away for someone who doesn't understand you." She didn't respond. That was step 1 in earning back points, but nowhere near enough. I took her phone and sent a message from my own. 3 hours from now, Casey and Mickey might disappear. Are you sure you want to continue this game? Camille looked at me with confusion. Who are Casey and Mickey? His family's dogs. Her eyes widened. What are you planning to do? Watch. 3 hours later, the 2 golden retrievers vanished from the Hayes family's fenced backyard while the gate remained locked. No security cameras captured any intrusion. No neighbor saw anything unusual. The family panicked, called the police, and posted frantic messages on social media. Colton called me that evening, his voice trembling with rage. "I swear to God, if anything happens to those dogs, I'll kill you." I laughed softly. "No, Colton, you won't. Because if you touch me, it won't be dogs that go missing." "You're insane," he hissed. "I'm methodical. There's a difference." I hung up. I kept the dogs for precisely 3 days, housed comfortably at a circuit member's rural property. On the 4th morning at 3 a.m., they were returned to the Hayes family's front yard, healthy and unharmed. The family was overjoyed, baffled by their mysterious return. Colton sent one final text message to my phone. "Thank you." I didn't respond. The message had been delivered. The following week, I called my attorney and had him prepare a post-nuptial agreement. The terms were unambiguous. If Camille was unfaithful in the future, she would forfeit all marital assets, custody rights, and spousal support. She would submit to monitoring at my discretion. My lawyer raised his eyebrows but didn't comment. He knew better than to question my decisions. When I presented the document to Camille, she signed it without hesitation. "I would have agreed to worse," she said, her voice steady. "I want to earn back your trust." Over the following months, Camille changed. She deleted her social media accounts without being asked. She limited contact with old friends who didn't support our marriage. She became attentive, present, focused on our relationship in ways she hadn't been for years. Each night she lay beside me, no longer turning away. I watched her transformation with calculated distance. Trust isn't rebuilt in days or weeks. It requires consistency, transparency, and time. I monitored her communications discreetly, less frequently as months passed without incident. The circuit maintained surveillance on Colton from a distance. He'd moved to Arizona, taken a construction management job, and shown no signs of attempting contact. 1 year later, Camille told me she was pregnant. We hadn't been trying, but neither had we been preventing it. As she showed me the positive test, tears in her eyes, I felt something shift between us. Our relationship had stabilized, but with a new power dynamic. She understood now that loving me wasn't just about emotion, it was about absolute commitment. "Are you happy?" she asked, vulnerability in her voice. I placed my hand on her still flat stomach. "Yes," I answered truthfully. And I was. But I was also vigilant. I would always be vigilant. Colton vanished from our city, then our state. My sources reported he'd settled into a predictable routine, dating casually, but never seriously. No messages, no calls, no appearances. He'd learned his lesson well. I filed all records of the incident in my secure safe, labeled simply, Situation 0001, Memory Processed. Camille never mentioned Colton again. It was as if he had never existed. As her pregnancy progressed, I found myself softening toward her. Not becoming careless, never that, but allowing myself to feel again. To plan for our child. To imagine a future where this episode was just a dark chapter in our otherwise intact story. But I never forgot. I never completely trusted. And I never removed the surveillance systems I'd put in place. I love her. Our daughter's birth 6 months ago only deepened that feeling. Watching Camille become a mother, devoted, protective, loving, has reinforced my decision to preserve our marriage. But I will never let love make me vulnerable. If she betrays me again, I won't need to say goodbye. I'll simply give the order. Some might call this controlling. Perhaps it is. But in a world where loyalty is rare and betrayal common, control is often the only currency worth having. Camille seems happy now. Genuinely so. Sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking, I catch her watching me with a mixture of love and fear. It's not an unpleasant combination. After all, in my professional life, respect built on fear has proven far more reliable than respect built on love alone. Why should marriage be any different?